First Bank.
Smooth 98.1, love music, love life. This is a Freshly Pressed, looking at the stories making the headlines across the country. And as always, we love to know your thoughts. Let us know what they are. The WhatsApp number is 0809 440 981. You can also tweet at Smooth981. And we're streaming live as well, so you can catch the live stream up on our YouTube channel. It's Smooth981, and you can even post a comment on there as well. I've got two analysts joining me this morning, Joseph Obari and AB Bozimo. Good morning and welcome.
Hello, good
morning,
AB
and the rest of Lagos. I hope everybody is fine.
Yes, indeed. I'm looking forward to the weekend.
Yes, indeed.
All right. So our first story comes from Punch. Now, the Central Bank of Nigeria has started the disbursement of old Naira notes to the deposit money banks. Government authorities are stepping up efforts to ensure that the currency scarcity, which has inflicted a lot of hardship on Nigerians, draws to a close. Now, the central bank had directed the banks to pick up the old 1,500 and 200 Naira notes at its offices across the country for onward disbursement to customers.
Yes. What I can't really understand is exactly why it has taken this long. I don't know whether this sudden rush or flurry of activity is in any way connected with the threat by Labour to go on strike, but it befuddles me that it's taken over a month for this currency to have filtered down into the system. Already they're telling us that we're unlikely to get a reduction in the queues and all that till sometime middle to late next week. But I'd imagine and I'd hope that the new notes and the old notes will be made available, because we supposedly spent a lot of money printing these new notes. It would be a pity if all we begin to see are only the old notes, and even then, the worst of the old notes. Because before the currency changed, there were some banks I could go to and see very nice, crisp, new 500 and 1,000 Naira notes. I would hope that those are the kind that are being put back into circulation. Otherwise, I would just say this entire activity, whose economic ideals I actually agree with in terms of bringing currency out of circulation and thereby making the CBN better able to control monetary policy. I agree with the principles, but the execution has been an absolute catastrophe. So let's see whether this way too late effort will actually yield some results. But there's nothing we can do until today is Friday. It will take some days, some weeks. Even if I'm sending a package from Abuja to any part of the country, it takes 1 to 2 days. So thinking that is money with the higher security necessity, it might take 2 to 4 or more days, at least a week from now, before we begin to see. So the question is, with this announcement, would Labour still go ahead and carry out their strike? That's something that would interest us to see next week.
All right, Joseph, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, my appeal would be that Labour doesn't need to add to the crisis, because going on strike just hardens the situation in the country. And unfortunately, it's been mismanaged. I mean, just like AB said, this has been mismanaged. Whatever is being done is just it's a patchwork. That's what we are having. It's a patchwork. And it's funny because they are giving excuses, oh, it's going to take time for the currency to percolate. But we have central bank offices in all the states of the country. So what's the problem? Flights goes to almost everywhere in this country. So what is the challenge? It's just that this whole thing is mismanaged, and we hope that these face-saving measures will really work out and save the economy, because there have been huge economic losses from this whole thing, huge economic losses, and we can arrest it at least.
Okay, so let's go on to the next story. Don't forget the WhatsApp number to send your messages to is 0809 444 0981. Now, this comes from Punch. Former Deputy President of the Senate, Ike Ekweremadu, is at risk of a 10-year sentence, and this is in line with the Modern Slavery Act 2015. A court in the UK has found him and his wife Beatrice guilty of organ trafficking. Now, following the guilty verdicts, Ekweremadu and his wife were remanded in custody and await sentencing on the 5th of May.
This story breaks my heart on many fronts because, first of all, this is a high-ranking officer of Nigeria, government of Nigeria, who is enmeshed in this kind of very scandalous case. The outcome of the trial, for those of us who understand how the law works, it's no surprise. I mean, we knew that eventually this was going to come because the laws in the United Kingdom are quite very strict and clear. The plank of the defense was the intention behind why they were doing that. It doesn't really matter. What the law in the United Kingdom actually looks out for is any element of exploitation, where somebody who is economically disadvantaged is being taken advantage of. And in this instance, they've been able to prove that the young man who was procured to provide the organ as a donor was underprivileged, and he was promised some reward for doing that. And also that the other element is that he is not a relative, he's not a blood relative of the recipient of that donor. So the prosecution have been able to prove all the elements of crime here. And once the doctor who reported the case to the police did so, they were only just waiting for these person suspects to come in, and immediately they came in, they were arrested. And it's sad because I think this could have been avoided. Maybe people who are advising the legislator didn't do a good job in actually understanding what the law in the United Kingdom says about this matter, and all that. So, and then the other part of it where I feel so bad is that if in Nigeria we had the kind of medical facility where this could happen, where this kind of organ transplant can happen, where a system has been established, perhaps would have saved this man and his family this terrible experience. But it's just heartbreaking. On the other hand, some people have argued that Nigerian government should have shown interest in the plight of the Ekweremados and requested that, being a high-ranking officer of government, they want to take the case for trial here. But it was intriguing that while he was going through this, in fact, the EFCC made a move at even confiscating his assets and what's his case for him, So sometimes you wonder what really plays in government, whether politics is that deadly that we can do. But the judgment has been passed, and the next thing will be sentencing. Unless perhaps they will have to appeal, but I don't think that the elements of this case will really change significantly. So it's a very sad one for us as a country, that we're losing a bright mind and somebody as high as a deputy Senate president, in this circumstance. It's sad.
Well, in my view, the one place that I have an overlap with you is the fact that there is no facility to have carried out that type of procedure in Nigeria. And why it's particularly unfortunate and even ironic is that the person had opportunities over decades to at least introduce the type of legislation that could have led to having the quality of healthcare he clearly is aware exists in other climes. But rather than that, as you say, coincidentally, he may allegedly have been acquiring properties, 40 at the last count. I don't know whether any of those properties could actually accommodate kidney transplant facilities. It's a lesson for us all. I'm not about the emotional part of it personally. I wish his daughter well. I would hate to have anyone I know in any medical circumstances, starting with myself. But when a person could have provided healthcare facilities by legislation saying every Nigerian deserves the ability to get the right kind of healthcare in the event that they happen to have ailments, and fight for it, fight for the people. Maybe locate it in your own village for all I care. Then the rest of us could do medical tourism and go to your village and rent hotels around there and give you economic aid. But instead, you chose to put your faith in another place. And unfortunately, the way you went about it is so seemingly, according to the story, you're contacting this person, according to the story, getting some person who you don't know, promising them. You see, he's a lawyer. And when it comes to law, lawyers are held to a higher standard than ordinary non-learned people. So I'm afraid I find my only regret is that this entire procedure could not have happened in Nigeria. As for him facing the consequences of misdeeds, so be it. He's no better and no worse than anybody else.
All right, let's look at some of
to behaving like that.
Some messages coming through via WhatsApp. And this one is from Ezekiel. He says, it's funny that the same slave masters, the UK, are condemning another person for modern slavery offenses. What an act of hypocrisy. And Daisy says, I'm not being heartless, but our elite feel laws do not apply to them. Unfortunately, everywhere is not Nigeria. Yes, I know any parents will do anything to save their child, but most importantly, it has to be within the law. Let this be a lesson for us to fix our own health care. All right. And let's go on to this one from Ajayi. Ajayi says, this verdict for Senator Ekweremadu and his wife for organ harvesting is a tragedy, not only for the Ekweremadu family, but for the country as a whole. It's a big shame that this could happen to such a high-ranking Nigerian legislator. All right. Another message coming through, and this one is from BDA. BDA says the biggest lesson in this Ekweremadu case is the cost of ignorance. If the Nigerian legislative had a culture of carrying out detailed research before passing laws, the UK laws may not have caught him and his team off guard. You have to pity him because there is no parent that won't go to any length to save their child's life. God bless Nigeria. Let's take a quick break and we'll continue the conversation on the other side. This is Freshly Pressed on Smooth 98.1.
Maybe any relationship with Bozimo?
Yes, that's my late uncle. That's my late uncle.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Wow, that was my mentor, my senior mentor then.
Really? Okay.
Yeah,
That's he passed on 4 years ago, maybe 5.
Yeah.
He's my uncle, one of my favorite uncles ever.
Very grand gentleman.
He was a good man. I mean, flawed like all of us, but a good person at the heart of it. Yeah. Zibby, you're looking very well.
Thank you, AB.
I'm glad you are well and back on the seat.
Yes. Right. Oh, wait, we're streaming live.
But
it's all right.
Okay. That's great.
Yeah.
That's great.
Oh, wow. Nice to see you as well, AB. Nice to see
fantastic. You. It's fantastic. Awesome. I'm really honored and privileged. Thank you. I'll hurry it up so that I won't waste time. I don't want to cover many stories, so I'll make sure I'm fast.
That's fine. It's okay. We don't need to go through all the stories as long as you. Yes.
Okay, great.
Okay, we're back on in 5.
Okay.
You're listening to Freshly Pressed on Smooth 98.1. It's Zibby here, and I've got my analysts this morning, Joseph and AB. We're looking at the stories and making the headlines. Don't forget, you can be a part of the conversation. The WhatsApp number is 0809 444 981. You can also tweet at Smooth981. And we're streaming live as well via WhatsApp. Via YouTube, I beg your pardon, just search for Smooth981 on YouTube and you can post a comment on there as well. I see your comments, I see your messages. We'll come back to them shortly. But let's move on to this headline, and it's coming from This Day. Now, members of the House of Representatives at plenary Thursday were divided over a bill seeking to amend the National Drug Law Enforcement Agency Act 2004 to confer additional responsibility on the power to grant and revoke licenses for the cultivation of cannabis for medicinal purposes.
Yes, the irony here is that they are, at loggerheads over this issue. I have no problem with a healthy, robust debate. And in fact, I expect it so that people can get the fundamentals of any issue and thrash it out thoroughly. I would love to have heard them being, opposed to or being at opposite ends of situations where they're asking whether children below 5 years should get free, drugs, whether adults in university should get free healthcare. It's interesting that cannabis is making the headlines for the simple reason that, yes, in some advanced countries and some areas of the world now, certain regions have gone ahead to legislate it. And I understand from studies that it has some medicinal qualities that are beneficial to people. But I think this is a bit of putting the cart before the horse. We're talking about medical cannabis. Just the story before, we talked about a medical situation where a high-ranking legislator of Nigerian origin has been caught up in a web of his own making abroad, seeking healthcare. How about we have an argument over the overall issues of healthcare in Nigeria? And then when we have that more or less knocked and pinned down, we can now delve into this particular matter and others that apply. I mean, it's easy to make light of the matter because it's a bit of a risible topic, but I will stay on topic. The point is, cannabis, in my view, is not a priority of medical care in Nigeria right now. I am not saying it cannot be useful. I'm saying I would like to hear other debates that make healthcare as a whole a focus. I'd like to hear debates that make healthcare available at decent pricing. I'd like to hear about the quality of healthcare available being the subject of debate. And then in the course of that, we can now go into cannabis or insulin or a myriad of other things that are useful medically. I think this, I can't deny, this may be putting the puff before the necessary pass. Let's focus.
All right. And let's go on to our messages. And Tayo says legislation is not even passed and marijuana is abused in the most unimaginable way. It would be interesting to see how that could be addressed. Another message. Okay, let's go on to our live stream on YouTube and take some of the messages coming through. Kazim says, God bless you, AB. I totally agree with your views on the Ekweremadu issue. The man was in a position of power to help fix the healthcare at home, but chose not to, and now he faces the consequences. Obina Akajobi says, in all this, my heart goes out to the daughter. If this surgery happened in Nigeria, the young man may have died without adequately being compensated. We must look at it from the point of view of the young man. And Olabode via WhatsApp says, due to lack of quality and affordable medical facilities in Nigeria, many people have died. Our elected officials care less about the common people. Obviously, this may feel like nemesis catching up to the Ekweremadus. And another message, this one is from Kofo. Kofo says, on Ekweremadu's case, what he did is a crime and should be a crime anywhere. Soliciting an organ by inducement is despicable. He's brought shame to himself, his family, and the country. I disagree that the Nigerian government should have requested to try him here. We know what the judicial system is, and justice may not have been served. And another message from Nasir. Nasir says, Sympathy for the senator who lured a youth to harvest his organ for a family member? No, I think he got what he deserved. All right, so let's move on to our next story. The WhatsApp number is 0809 444 981. And this one is coming from Kogi State. The Guardian, the House of Assembly has suspended 9 of its members on allegations bordering on terrorism. And the Deputy Speaker, Alpha Rabiu Momo, who represents Ankara constituency, while contributing on the debate of the allegations of terrorism leveled against them, supported the suspension of the lawmakers, saying that anyone, regardless of their status, who is found contravening the law should face the consequences.
Wow, the story leaves a lot of questions unanswered. Terrorism charges or allegation, have they been arrested? How were they implicated? We understand that this action actually was following a letter written by the governor. The governor communicated to the House that these persons have been cited for terrorism offenses. So we need to know more. And unfortunately, the story doesn't tell us more. The DSS hasn't come up to say, oh, okay, this is, this is why it's very important that the federal government comes up and publishes the names of those they say they have been cited for terrorism. We have been told several times by the Attorney General that over 400 Nigerians have been identified or linked with terrorism acts. And to today, nobody has told us who these persons are. Could these persons be in any way in that list? So a lot of mysteries around this matter that is of importance to the nation, to the well-being of this country. And this is why sometimes we wonder what the drive of the federal government is. Actually, whether they are determined to fight terrorism sincerely, because until the United Arab Emirates arrested some Nigerians who had link with Boko Haram. In fact, and that case was even curious because when they were arrested and tried, and eventually the Nigerian government was making a case for them that they should be released. And so these things just like a web. It's just nebulous web. You have people who have been linked to terrorism. You tell us you have them on they are working on getting them tried and so on. We are going to publish the list, or you till 1 year after we've not had anything, we've not seen anything. And then we hear that 7 legislators in Kogi State are linked with terrorism, and no question, no answers. Oh, wait, maybe we wait for the next few days and hope that maybe more details can come out as to how these persons were linked to terrorism. That is really very sad. And it goes to buttress the claim by some people that the terrorism network has gotten deep tentacles into the government system. That's it.
All right. Dami from Ikeja says, the banks and CBN can disburse sufficient amounts of cash to end this self-imposed crisis by next week if they so desire. Unfortunately, the performance of the CBN in the last few years does not inspire confidence. Dami says there are many hospitals in Nigeria that could easily handle the procedure. Why they chose to go to the UK is an answer that only the convicts can provide one. Okay, Toye says, CBN took so long because the people in charge are not necessarily impacted by the policies that the average Nigerian is subjected to. It's unfortunate and downright unfair, in my opinion. The point could be said about the senator and the situation he and his family are in. They are too far removed. Let's go on to the next story, and we have just about 3 minutes for this one. It's from the Daily Trust, and it has to do with fire incidents being recorded across the country. Now, according to this report, the figures given in losses are over 1 trillion naira worth of properties being damaged in 2022. and over 2,056 cases of fire incidents. Now, these statistics are from 2022, but in the past month or so here in Nigeria, there have been major fires in markets in basically north, south, east, west, all across the country. AB, you're an architect, and why do we have a rise in these fire incidents, and why are they so consistent?
The fact is, we are not putting the necessary means in place to, first of all, detect, alert, and suppress and maybe prevent fires from happening. We have too many unplanned spaces. We have people using planned spaces in an improper and unplanned manner. We don't have enough alarms. We don't have a way to communicate between the fire incidences and those who could help. We have situations where access to even help is locked because of our fear for security. So then you have people putting the wrong material in the place. There are certain categories of spaces you should not have certain kinds of things. We have that. You don't have enough space for people to run out. It's a whole set of things going wrong, and it often results ultimately in one little spark leading to a horrible conflagration. There should be fire prevention devices. There should be firefighting devices for immediate help. And then there should be a link to the fire services who should now come to add more. Around many of the markets, do you see hydrants? Do you see fire hose reels? Do you see sprinklers? No, you just see people coming together, putting something together, and then they say they're doing a market. That is unacceptable. But we have come to accept it because people say, how we go do? We can do better. Think about it. If people took insurance for their things, insurance companies would insist on you having certain things in place before they'll agree to give you insurance. But people are in this fatalistic mood where, look, I'll just do my best. Anything that happens, happens. That's simply not good enough. The losses are legion. So many trillions of naira, as we're hearing, are lost. People are injured. Some people never ever recover from these things, and it can all be avoided, or at least minimized, by proper environmental design. If you do all the right concerns, fires and accidents will happen, but their effect will be minimal. So everybody in the built environment, we are all stakeholders, both those who design it and those who use it. We must all be guided by the minimum acceptable building standards as it pertains to fire and fire safety. If we're not doing that, we're not yet serious.
All right, I'll take a few messages. Deji says, make fire drills mandatory in all sectors with punitive consequences if ignored. Another message says, in other countries, there's a registered waiting list for those who need a transplant. What is the situation here in Nigeria? What's our medical sector doing in terms of transplants? I feel there is no help or direction coming from the medical community concerning organ transplants. The medical community has been very silent, which speaks a lot about where we are. And Abbas says we have hospitals that can do these things here, but people have their preferences, just as people leave America for medical procedures in Mexico. It's in this same country that we've had doctors separate conjoined twins and heart transplants. We don't need to be political about this by saying the government did little to help him. There are laws, and if he had been tried here, we would have made it a story of a political witch hunt. Thank you for your messages. Thank you for listening. But that is all the time that we have for Freshly Pressed this morning. Special thanks to my analysts, of course, Joseph and AB, for joining us this morning.
Thank you. It's always a pleasure and a privilege.
Wonderful weekend. AB,
Thank you.
Joseph, we'll get in touch. Have a great day.
Yeah. Thanks, sir. Thanks, sir. Yes.
And that is it for Freshly Pressed. Do stay with us. There is